Hey everyone, it's Chris and welcome back to another tutorial in our Tetris tutorial series. In this tutorial we're going to cover audio. So we're going to be adding a background sound to play on a loop through our game. And we're also going to be adding some sound effects. Basically those are going to be used for when our pieces are moving and landing and doing all kinds of other things. Right? So we've got that. And to get started, first you need to also make sure that you followed the previous tutorial because we're going to rely on some of the methods that were created for our scoring system to help with our audio clips, right? So let's go ahead and get started. Go ahead and load up the last project, okay? And that should be the last one we worked on, which is the scoring, right? And what we're going to do, first things first, we're going to go to our game script. And we're going to add a component, and for that we're going to add an audio source component. And the audio source component is basically used as a source to play our audio from. Okay, audio source components can be static, meaning that they're not going to change. They're going to be in one place, or they can follow a game object around the scene. In 3D worlds, that's really cool because you can place different audio sources at different parts of the scene so that you get that real awesome 3D audio effect. So like when you're getting closer, the sounds are getting louder, that kind of thing. With this game, we're not going to use that. We're just going to stick strictly with 2D audio, so we're not going to mess around with our 3D sound settings. We're just going to leave everything the same. I already know that the game loop sound that I've downloaded is going to be a little loud compared to my sound effects. So I'm going to turn the volume of our audio source down to about 0.15, okay? And what's an audio source without an audio clip? Basically just a component that does nothing, right? So we want to add an audio clip to this. We also want to make sure that this plays on awake so that when our game starts, the audio is going to automatically start playing. And let me rephrase that. It's not actually when our game starts. It's when this game object is instantiated. And since this game object is instantiated here, when our scene loads, as soon as our scene loads, this game object instantiates and this plays on awake, okay? So then we want also our game loop to actually play on a loop, right? Because we want it to restart after it's finished. Otherwise, the game gets boring after the sound stops, right? So let's go ahead and make sure that's on a loop. And then we also we need an audio. So let's create a new folder in our assets. Right? So right click, create folder, and we'll call this audio. And I'm going to go ahead and drag in all these sounds I downloaded. So I've got 4 in all. I've got a game loop, a landing sound, a rotate sound, and a move sound. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and drag this into the audio folder. Alright, so now if you look in the audio folder, you'll see what I'm talking about with the game loop being so much louder than the sound effects. And you can tell here if you look at the wave of the audio and the waves here of the sound effects. So these are much lower in volume compared to the game loop. Okay. So in order to get our background music going, all we have to do is we have to assign this game loop to the audio source of the game script. Right? So this audio source here, all it needs is this game loop audio clip assigned to its audio clip property, and that's it. Alright, so let's go ahead and play the game and see if we've got background sound. There we go. It's that easy to add background music to your game. Notice how we didn't write a single line of code. All we did was add an audio source to our game script, which is initialized with our scene when that loads. And then we've got the play on awake property checked on that audio source component to go ahead and start our audio as soon as that game object is instantiated. And then after that, we've got everything set on a loop so that the audio just continuously plays over and over and over and over again, so that our game continues to be exciting, right? So let's go ahead and stop. And now we want to add even more excitement, right? We want to add in our sound effects. So for that, We're going to use not the game script, but we're going to use our tetromino class, because that's where all the movement happens anyways, right? So when you're moving left and right and down, that's all specified in the tetromino class. When the piece lands and it's set to spawn a new one, it is also in the tetromino class. When we rotate, that's also in the tetromino class. So it only makes sense to put that in that tetromino class, right? So let's go ahead and open that up. And the first thing we're going to want to do is we want to make references to the sounds that we're going to use in our different sound effects, right? So, and the easiest way to do that is kind of like how we assign the audio clip in our game script for our background sound. We want to have properties available to us for the various audio clips that we're going to use to set up our sounds. So we're going to do we're going to create some public variables so they're available in the inspector, and we're going to make them types of audio clips, which is what we're going to need in order to assign audio files to variables. So we'll make them audio clips. So we'll create a public audio clip that is a move sound. Then we're going to create a rotate sound variable and a land sound variable. Okay, land sound, right? And so we don't get confused, even though these are pretty self-explanatory, let's add some descriptions. Okay, so this is the sound for when the tetromino is moved. And sound for when the tetromino is rotated. And the sound for when the tetromino lands. Alright, so these are just going to be references to our audio clips that we're going to use in our audio source to play these audio clips. And in order to use an audio source to play audio clips, we have to have an audio source. So we're going to create a private variable, which is going to be of type audio source. And we're going to call this audio source. Okay. And this is a little different. We're going to add in our start method, which we previously didn't use. And in our start method, we are going to initialize our audio source variable to be the component, the actual audio source component. Okay. Now realize that in order for us to get the audio source component from our game object, which is our tetromino game object, which is part of the class, right? So in order to get the audio source component, we actually have to have the audio source component on our tetromino game object. So we have to go in and add that. So before we write any more code, let's go ahead and add our audio source to our tetromino game object so that we don't forget to do that later. So let's go to resources and select the first tetromino and shift and select the last one so that we select them all at the same time. We're going to click add component and click audio source. Right, that adds the audio source. We're going to select or deselect play on awake. Leave the volume where it's at because those are going to actually play at that volume because we want them to be louder than the audio, or the same about, which is what I've adjusted my audio to, the background music, to kind of match the volume of the loops, or sorry, the sound effects. If you really wanted to do it right, you would take the audio, the game loop and the sound effects and everything and normalize them so that they all have the same volume level, or whoever does your audio, make sure that they create them all at the same sound level, and they usually do. They're pretty good about that. So we've got them all selected, we've added the audio source, we've unchecked play on awake, we don't need to set loops or anything, so that's basically done here. We've got our move, rotate, and land sound variables that we can go ahead and assign as well. So let's go to the audio folder, go ahead and take the land sound and set that here, the move sound, put that here, and the rotate sound, put that here. And remember, these are the variables that we just created in our tetromino class. So let's go ahead and head back to our tetromino class and actually add in the code that'll play these audio clips, because right now all we have is an audio source and we've got 3 audio clip variables. Without any more code, this is not going to achieve anything whatsoever. So we actually need to add in the code that'll actually play these files, right? So the best way to do this is to create some methods here, okay, to keep the code clean. I like to create separate methods for doing separate things, right? So rather than putting it all in one method or if statement or whatever, we're going to create separate methods. So we're going to create a method for, and these are going to be voids because they don't return anything. So void play move audio. Oops. And create another one. We'll call this play rotate audio. And one more, and call this one play land audio. All right. And then in here, all we got to do is call our audio source variable, and we're going to use a method called play one shot, and it wants an audio clip. So we'll just give it the move sound. All right. We're going to do the same thing for the rotate and the land. So audio source, play one shot. Rotate and audio source, play one shot, and land sound. All right, and let's go ahead and add some summaries to these. Plays audio clip when tetromino is moved left, right, up, down. Plays audio clip when tetromino is rotated. And finally, plays audio clip when tetromino lands. Okay. So now that we've got these methods, all we have to do is in our check user input method, we just have to call these at the right time, right? And by the right time, I mean we want to call them when, like for instance, the movement audio, right? So we could put that here, right beneath this transform position, because we're changing the position, right? So we want to move it, or we want to play the move audio, but maybe not. We only want to play the move audio if we're actually moving the piece, right? So we go one step further and we go into this check is valid position if statement, right? Because that's when we're updating the grid and saying, okay, we're clear, we're gonna move the piece to here, right? Otherwise, we just reverse our move and don't make our move at all, basically. We cancel out our move. So we should cancel out our audio too, right? And that doesn't happen if we play the audio at this position. We want to play the audio right here in the if statement. If we were saying, okay, we're going to move the piece, then we're going to check to see if the position's good. The position is good, so let's play the audio to say, hey, we're going to move the piece and we're going to play the audio, right? Here, if we did this, we would move the piece or not move the piece and still play the audio. We don't want that. We want to only play the audio when the piece is moved. So we put that here. Play, move, audio. Okay? So I'm just going to copy that. I'm going to put that in the same place for when we press the left arrow. Okay? And we're going to put that in the same place for when we press the down arrow. Except we also want to only do this if the down arrow is pressed, because in our in this method or in this if statement specifically, we are saying, hey, if there is a key press of the down arrow, or if it's time to move the tetromino piece down, then move the tetromino piece down. But we don't want that audio sound to play every single time the piece moves down, only when we're actually pushing the down button. Okay? So we're just going to add another if statement in here, and we're just going to say if input dot get key down, key code dot down arrow. Okay, so only if that's the case, do we want to play our move audio. Okay? So that should take care of play move audio. So let's go ahead and see what that sounds like. See, now I'm pressing the button, but my piece doesn't move, so the move audio doesn't play. Okay. That sounds to me like it's working perfectly. So let's do the next part, which is we are going to go ahead and add in our rotate audio. Okay, so the rotate if condition is right here. Okay, so this may look a little confusing. You may at first glance look at this and be like, okay, well, we'll just put it right here. No, you don't want to do that, right? Because that'll play the rotate sound whether the rotation's allowed or not. For instance, with the square, we're not allowing rotation, so the square will never rotate, so we don't want to play the rotate sound. So we want to make sure that we're in this if statement, okay? So we only want to play a sound if the rotation's allowed, okay? And we don't really care if our rotation is limited, right? Because we want to play the sound if we're rotating, right? So rotations actually happen, and the best bet, the best place to actually put our rotation sound, again, is going to be when we update the grid. Because here, when we're checking if the position is valid, all right, that only happens if we're allowing the rotation. It doesn't care whether the rotation is limited or not. So here we know without a doubt that we're updating the grid, and at that point we want to also play the audio, right? So we're going to go ahead and play rotate audio. All right, so let's see if that's working. So we've got down, left, right, and we don't have a rotate sound on our square because our square is set to not allow rotation, which makes sense because why would you rotate a square? And then we've got our rotate sound playing here. Even with the limiting rotation, we're playing still the rotate sound. We're not playing it when we're up against the wall because we're not allowed to rotate. So this is actually working really well, just as expected. Okay. Now, we still don't have a sound playing for our land effect. So like when the piece lands, there's nothing, no sound feedback telling us our piece has landed. Now we can go without that. I mean, that's fine. We still got like a lot of stuff going on right now, right? So, but we want that. We want our land sound. So let's go back into our script. And our land sound is going to be pretty simple as well. We want that to play down here. Okay, so in our down arrow, where we're checking to see if the piece has landed, right? Here. When we know, okay, it's time to spawn the next piece, that's when we know to play the audio that the piece has landed. We know for sure that the piece has landed at that point, right? So here we're going to go ahead and play land audio. So now, let's go back, play our game. And you heard that? Let's do it again. Our piece landed. And it landed again. Alright. So now we've got a sound for the piece landing. Sounds pretty good, I think. Pretty basic, but it's just a little feedback sound, you know? And that ticking is actually starting to annoy me, so maybe you guys want to find a different sound. Oh, we still need one more sound, don't we? We need a sound when our line clears. Alright. So let's do that. Let's add in a sound for when the line clears. Now, when do we know when a line is cleared? Well, our line clears happen actually in our game script, right? Right here, And this is where I said we need the scoring stuff, right? Because we need to know cleared 1 line, cleared 2 lines, cleared 3. And this is actually kind of cool, right? The way we did this, because if you want to play a different sound depending on how many lines you cleared, like, you know, a cool sound when you're clearing 1 line, a super cool sound when you're clearing 2, a super duper cool sound when you're clearing 3, and like the most awesome sound you ever heard when you clear 4 lines. We already have the code here. This method gets called when 1 line is cleared, when 2 lines are cleared, when 3 lines are cleared, and 4 lines are cleared, right? Now, for our purposes here, to keep everything kind of simple, all I'm going to do is I'm going to put that in our update score. We're going to create a method called play line cleared sound. And for you guys, I'm going to play line cleared sound. Okay. And we're going to play this right here if the number of rows this turn is greater than 0. So we only want to play it if we actually cleared a line, right? So play line cleared sound. All right. And then we actually need to do the same thing that we did in our tetromino class, and we need to get the audio source component. So we need to create a variable to reference our audio source. So we go private audio source, okay? And then we initialize our audio source, get component, audio source, okay? And then in our play cleared sound, or play line cleared sound, we're going to do audio source dot play one shot, and we need to assign a clip to that. So we need to actually create a variable here, public audio clip, and let's call this one cleared line sound. And let's pass this to our play one shot method of our audio source. Cleared line sound. Alright. And alright, so all we need to do now is we need to assign an audio clip to our cleared line sound. And to do that, we actually need to first save the script, and then go back to Unity, go into our audio folder, and I'm going to go ahead and drag in this line cleared MP3 file that I downloaded. And in the game script, we're going to go ahead and here's our cleared line sound variable that we created, and we're going to drag that on there. Alright. And then we're going to go ahead and press play and see what happens. Did you guys hear that? Do it again. Sounds pretty good. Although you can barely hear it, and you know why, right? And it's because we turned the volume way down because our background audio is so loud. And our sound for clearing the line is basically playing through that same audio source, so the volume is like really reduced, so we can barely hear it. A couple of ways around that. One, the preferred way is to actually go ahead and process your game loop audio. Make sure that that's normalized to the volume of your sound effects, so that you don't have to adjust your actual game volume, your background noise. Okay. So, but that basically covers it. So we've got. Okay, guys. So we are done with our tutorial. We've got our audio all set up. We've got background music playing. We've got sound effects all worked out. We did a little bit of coding, and everything is working beautiful. Our next tutorial is going to cover either how to add a preview window so that we know what piece is coming next, or we're going to get into optimizing our keys, our user input, the left and right and down movements. Quite frankly, because I'm getting tired of pushing that down button repeatedly to get that piece to move. So it's getting really, really annoying. So I'd like to fix that very, very soon. So maybe that'll be next. So I'm not sure yet. But either way, I'm going to do a new tutorial every week. Most likely will be released either Saturday, Sunday, or Monday. I'm going to try to shoot for Saturdays, but you never know what comes up. So I'm going to try to either do it on one of those 3 days. There's going to be some other fun stuff coming along the way as well. And once we're done with our Tetris tutorial series, there's going to be another great tutorial coming up. I've already started working on that. And other than that, if you guys have any special requests for tutorials, feel free to send me an email or a comment down below. And remember, guys, subscribe. All right, so that's it. Stay tuned for the next tutorial, and I'll see you guys soon.